Folks, welcome back to Ageless Athlete. Excited to share that I climbed outside this past weekend for the first time in 8 months. Went to Sonora, a place near Yosemite, and did some sport climbing amongst these overhanging basalt cliffs. This was the longest I think I may have gone without climbing outside in the past decade. I'm still injured. The body still feels a bit broken, but I feel I'm mending along slowly but surely. Today, my adventure-seeking and dream-chasing friends get ready to be inspired by a story that proves anything is possible, no matter where you come from. Today on Ageless Athlete, we are taking you to India, a land of vibrant culture and breathtaking landscapes, to meet Mohit Oberoi, a man who carved his own path in the world of adventure sports. This episode is very special to me as it allowed me to travel back to India, the country of my roots, and bring on somebody who has long been a source of inspiration for this young kid growing up in Delhi, dreaming of the mountains. Now, you might think of India and picture bustling cities or ancient temples, but for Mohit Oberoi, or Mo amongst friends, it was a playground of unexplored potential. Growing up in a country where adventure sports were not exactly mainstream, Mo and his friends practically pioneered the climbing scene, scaling cliffs with homemade gear and a whole lot of determination. Mo's thirst for adventure didn't stop at the cliffs. He went on to compete in various Ironman triathlons, perhaps one of the first people from India to do so. Also swam across the English Channel. Yes, that English Channel. And also run ultra marathons that would make many seasoned athletes weep. He has completed some epic fast packing trips, scaling and enchaining summits across the Himalayas. We will talk about some of them. Mo is living proof that you don't need fancy facilities or a well-trodden path to achieve the extraordinary. And let's be real, folks. Mo's journey hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. He's faced challenges and many moments of doubt. But that's what makes his story so damn inspiring. He embraces vulnerability, learns from his mistakes, and keeps pushing forward with a smile on his face, with the curiosity of a beginner. He is the ultimate vulnerable adult learner, a theme that we explored in the last podcast as well. So get ready to be amazed by the world of Mo. We'll hear about his early days as a climbing pioneer in India, his transition to other endurance sports. We will discover how he fuels his body and mind for those and what keeps him motivated to keep exploring. And of course, we learn about the importance of community, positive support, and believing in yourself, even when the odds seem daunting. We'll also talk about how he's raised perhaps India's first climbing family. Besides himself, Annie, his wife, climbs. His sons, Iqbal and Abhimanyu, are crushers, sending double-digit boulder problems all across the Himalayas and in the south of India. Today's episode of the Ageless Athlete podcast is sponsored by RecPack. RecPack is a nutritionally complete instant meal for outdoor adventurers that saves space, weight, and time in any environment. It has been designed because typical outdoor meals take a long time to prepare and cannot be eaten on the move, and snacks like energy bars are not nutritionally balanced and complete. It has been designed by top sports nutritionists and is made with high quality ingredients, including oats, coconut oil, and minerals. RecPack's 700 calorie, 420 gram protein, lightweight meal fits in your pocket and keeps you fueled and focused on any outdoor activity. To use, you can just add water and drink it on the move. RecPack will keep me fueled when I go out on some of my long multi-pitch climbs that I have planned in Yosemite and the Sierras this summer, where I'll be strapped to the side of a wall and cannot fire up my jet boil. you can get a 25% discount on RecPack by entering the code ageless25 on their website card. You can find the link and code in the show notes. So let's start the show. This is Ageless Athlete, and Mo's story is a powerful reminder that adventure knows no bounds. Hey Mo, great to have you on the show. I already know that this is going to be one of my favorite episodes for a few reasons. One is you are, in my mind, a true multi-sport athlete. You do so many different, diverse, interesting things. And also, you are practicing these sports often in India, in a country I grew up. So I sometimes think I get to live my outdoor dreams vicariously with you. To start off with, let's start with climbing. That is how you and I initially connected. And correct me, but I think climbing in many ways might still be your favorite sport. To start off, I want to ask you to take us back a few years ago when you visited California to climb in Yosemite. And as we were driving down the valley floor, you looked up and you saw El Capitan. And I saw your face light up. Please describe, what did you see and what you were feeling at that time?
Yeah, thanks, Ishu, for having me on the show. And yeah, I mean, the first thing was thanks to you that I could actually make this El Cap or the Yosemite dream come true, which is coming to a place. It was more of a pilgrimage to me, to be honest, because I'd seen photos of El Cap since I was in the teens, from the Mountain Magazine and Climbing Magazine, photos of starting from the first ascent of Zenyatta Mondata to Randy Levitt climbing El Cap and jumping off. So it is something which was there lying dormant for 3 decades. And as we crossed the tunnel and entered Yosemite, and mixed emotions, right? One was a dream come true that I was finally here at this cliff, which I had dreamed of almost for 3 decades. And the second was, of course, of awe that how the hell are we going to try and climb this now? So the mixed emotions, but it was great. It was brilliant.
That is a great recollection indeed. And I hear you on the flood of emotions. You know, you see El Cap and it looks amazing. And then you realize that you have this daunting project ahead of you to attempt to get to the top. That is quite something. And we will get back to your El Cap trip later in the conversation. But to ask you a little bit about what are these different sports that you do, and how did climbing become an integral part of your life?
To be honest, I'm an adventurer at heart. I think that's what I've concluded. I needed an adventure. So climbing is something I started off in my teens. It was always an adventure to go out. It was not about performance. It was not about grades or about anything. But it was about having this adventure, having an epic outside, having these mega days out. Of course, initially it was very short multi-pitch climbs, but then we were always on to trad climbing and almost no bouldering then. But it was an integral part of my upbringing. And then, of course, I branched out a little later into other sports, mainly running or swimming or trail running or mountaineering. These, of course, followed climbing, where I wanted to get into bigger adventures. But I always feel you're absolutely correct. I'm a climber at heart. I keep doing these sports off and on, but then I always swing back to climbing as my go-to sport. That's correct.
Mo, what were your origins into climbing? If I recall, I'm a few years shy of you, but when I was growing up, climbing was not a prominent sport in Delhi in India. What were your beginnings as an adventurer and as a rock climber?
So we started in school. Basically, we went hiking a couple of times, and there were these very dedicated bunch of people who used to run clubs, and these were hiking clubs, and they would dabble a little bit into rock climbing and mountaineering. And they had this thing called the training camp for children or adults, and I did a couple of small hikes with them, day hikes, and then I joined them for a climbing course in which they would teach you the days where you used to tie a bowline around your waist, and there were days of the waist belay. So these were like very basic with pitons, and there was no camming devices on wires or anything. I'm talking about late 70s, early 80s, 81, 82. And there was about hip belay and rappelling with stomach rappelling or dulfur seat rappelling, what you call now. So these are very basic kind of climbing things. That's what the start of the art was then, probably in India at least. That triggered off my interest for climbing, rock climbing, because I found that to be the next step from my days of hiking. When I started off, I did a course. I found a magazine run by the Indian Marketing Foundation, which had an article about rock climbing around Delhi. And I was like, okay, if someone can go, why don't I go and visit this place, which is actually near the Qutub Minar, which is very close in central Delhi, close to central Delhi. I mean, I would say suburbs then, but now it's almost center of Delhi now. And there was a stack of rocks which are in a park. And I decided to go there and start climbing on our own with a clothesline which was bought like a thick 10 mm clothesline, which and some carabiners and some there were no harnesses then, so you made your own sling harnesses and some rudimentary carabiners, and just started a journey of self discovery basically, and then so on and so forth, and one then met a community, and then carried on to higher rocks, so bigger ranges. So that was early beginning. It was the late 70s, early 80s. So my first climbing trip on my own, I would say, was probably self-support, was in 1982, where I actually went on my own without any guides. And I don't know how, and when I look back, I just don't understand how we even survived. I don't know what all we were doing there. I guess we did whatever we could, but we did survive those days. And a bit of a miracle. But yeah, looking back, I mean, it was just amazing, amazing time of discovery of ourselves and of the rocks and what we could do, making decisions, without any adult supervision, because it was just two friends. We were in the same class, and we had just done a course, and we decided to go on our own with our own gear.
Coming of age is always a profound stage in growing up for all of us. But when you have something as interesting and as outlying as climbing thrown in, it makes for a rather rich childhood indeed. And you survive that era of wearing harnesses made up of home developed climbing rope types of apparatuses to the point where you are today. But again, going back to the time you found this club and you ended up in this band of brothers, if I may, and you started going off, venturing into the mountains and also cracks that you were developing closer to home. I'm wondering, what was the setting like within your family and your community? Were there other people doing these kinds of adventuring things around you? Was your family aware that you were out there scaling cliffs? Yeah, describe to us how your community and your family and your friends perceived of these things that you were doing.
See, my mother was an educator. She was running a school, and she obviously knew the values of children involved in some kind of a sport, whether it was conventional sports like football or basketball or tennis or whatever, or doing outdoor sports. In fact, her own school, which she started, would go on outdoor trips. She would encourage that. She always felt that children had to indulge in some kind of sporting activity outside their classrooms and do things. So event came naturally when I took up the sport. It came very. I don't know what she felt within herself, but she was very, very forthcoming, and she was not, in fact, support us, my sisters and us also, to go and indulge in these kind of sports. I also wonder sometimes what would they think, what was happening. I don't know. I don't think they were well aware that we was trying to run out 20, 30 feet climbs, and we could have ground falls and everything else. But I think one thing they were clear is that we were obviously doing something which is something essential, which a child should be doing for their upbringing. I mean, of course, they don't understand the extreme parts, which, I mean, obviously they didn't expect that I would be trying to lead some 5.9s with the ground fall potential and all that. I mean, that complicates things, right? But I didn't even mention that to them, because that was something you didn't talk about at home. You had a great day out, and you were happy, and you had a smile on your face, and that was enough. So they were very accepting of that. Even going on expeditions, and we were living at the time of there was no internet, and there was no even phone connections in Delhi then. in India, where there was just once you left the home and that was it. You came back after you said you will be back on certain date after 25 days, and you showed up, and there was no connect, or you didn't connect with them. Maybe a letter sent from a base camp through a porter saying, just tell them you're fine, or just mentioning, which used to generally arrive after we had reached back. So it was very forthcoming. The family part was very, very supportive, I must say. And of course, my parents then, and now my wife, of course, very supportive of whatever adventures we're doing. And I think that's very important. Second part is about the community, the people I met initially. I think I'm extremely lucky. And I keep saying that I'm extremely lucky. Then I met people who were of the same mindset. Some of them were much older to me. Most of them are older to me. They were like 8 or 10 years senior to me, and I'm still connected with them. And they were very, very protective of me, and they were very, very, they encouraged me to do. Sometimes I feel they encouraged me to do all the hard leads, which they didn't want to do. This is only later on, I thought. But that helped me to actually hone my skills as a climber, get my skills up as a climber. So I think I was extremely lucky, I would say, that I started very early. And I started with the right people, and I had the right support from the family also, where there was no question asked. If I wanted to go for a month of hiking off school days, there was no problem. I would, was accepted. It was good.
So many things come together to help us pursue our passions. Obviously, talent and drive is a big part of that, but so is support from one's family and community. And your parents, kind of like my parents, have been very supportive of some of these different things that we do. My parents saw me climbing outside, I think for the first time a few years ago. It was quite a revelatory moment for them, because it's one thing to imagine, conceptualize some of these trips that I'm doing, but to actually see me at the end of a rope up in the mountains in Turkey where we were, and see me having a good time and doing things which sometimes seem a little crazy. But when you see that happen in front of you, and you see the whole process of tying into a rope, climbing up, and then you see other people around at the crag as well, and people who seem, just normal human beings with often normal lives and aspirations, I think it serves to normalize the sport in their eyes. So I'm very grateful that my family was able to see me climb. I think it's also surprising how many people I speak with whose families have actually never seen them climb. I mean, it's great that your family, they supported you, but I'm wondering if they ever joined you, your sisters or your parents, if they ever joined you for any of these climbing or mountain trips, either as spectators or even as co-participants.
So yeah, my mother did. We did one or two hikes together, day hikes, when she was leading a school group as a principal of her own school. She had her own school children going up, and she actually hiked with them, and I was part of that. So that was amazing. When I think back, I look back, it was a few times when she came. She actually offered to when I had no transport and no partners in Delhi once, a couple of times, actually not once, many times. She would actually offer to drive us in the school van, and she would not drive, but the driver would drive, and she would say, "Hi, take the school van." And I do remember her coming once or twice, and I trained the driver of the van, who was an ex-army guy, to actually belay me. So he would go from the side, and actually we'd throw the rope down, and he would belay me on top. So when I look back, I thought it sounds completely bizarre when I think about it now. She would be there reading a book or something, and she would just be there, but he would actually belay me. And I actually spent a few weekends with my ex-army driver of the school, who would help me. So it was so encouraging when I think now that which parent would do that, would say, okay, we go on a Sunday to Old Rocks, which is the climbing area, and she would just hang out while the school bus driver would actually belay me up some climbs. And he was obviously did not, I taught him rudimentary stuff, right? But I guess it worked. It did happen a couple of times like that, but not after that much. I mean, that was the initial time. And then I'm trying to think back what she would have been thinking. Like, did I know what I was doing as a 15-year-old? Or no, I don't think I was even 15 then. Maybe I was like 12, 13-year-old that actually trained the bus driver to belay me. And is that safe? Is that not? I have zero idea when I think back now, man. I don't know what she was. She didn't say anything. I remember now that she would just not say anything at all. She'd be there. And this happened not a couple of weekends, not too many times, but that's still a bit. That's the only time probably. And I also remember, yes, one crazy incident when I went with this independent group of people to the Hodge, which is the nearest climbing area in Delhi. And I was supposed to train them to climb, and I was helping them out. Again, as a 14-year-old, I don't know how was I qualified to teach people how to climb. I have zero idea. But obviously, I was asked to teach some people, some school kids, and their school kids, past guys, had to leave. And I remember seeing this new line I had seen, which I wanted to do, which is like a really gnarly offset, which no one had done before. And I was stayed back with my partner and say, let's climb this. But he says, the bus is leaving. So I was like, it doesn't matter, let them go. And they were saying, should we go? And he said, like, yeah, please leave. And I don't know how this happened. And then my parents showed up there. I think they knew that I was there on the weekend. And my dad and mom lined up there. And it's quite crazy coincidence. The bus is leaving and they land up there. And they say, where is Mohit? And I'm like, and the thing is, I'm stuck right above this last crux and outfit for the last half an hour. And I look down and I see my dad wearing his, he was just standing and looking up, like 70 feet up and looking at me and was wondering what I'm doing. And I looked at him and I was like, and I think within the next 2 minutes, I think I was on top. So I think, and they gave us a lift back home. And nothing was said, nothing was sort of shared, but it was like, I don't know what they were thinking, but it was this very bizarre incident. I was trying to recall the other day. So things like that happened, I guess. When there's no communication, there's no phones or WhatsApp. I mean, things just worked, right? They showed up. I was not supposed to know. I mean, we didn't know that they were going to show up. And I don't know how they show up. Climbing area, which they'd never been there before. And we managed to do the first descent. There was a climb called Chariots of Fire, which is a 5.7, still rated, pretty gnarly, shitty off width, which no one climbs now anymore. But yeah, things like that happened, I guess.
Wow. Your parents, from being, let's say, passive supporters, often became somewhat active co-participants. And again, if you're lucky, our parents will place this faith in us and allow us and support us to do things which they themselves may not understand completely, but they will stand behind us and let us do sometimes outrageous things that when you look back at makes one shake one's head in a bit of incredulity. Coming back, the early climbing days when you were doing first ascents around Delhi and you ended up writing this guidebook for the premier climbing area outside Delhi called Hodge. And we'll put a link in the show notes if anybody wants to ever visit Delhi and check out the climbing area, they can refer to your book. Mohit, you took that early entry into climbing to ultimately becoming really good and training and joining the Indian climbing team and representing the Indian climbing team. So describe to us, how did climbing and adventuring become an athletic sport for you? How were you training to get good at it? And how did you end up being part of the Indian team, and how did that performance go?
To answer your first part of the question, Kush, so climbing became a passion, became a completely obsessive kind of emotion through my teens, because that is something which is I leaned on for whatever. It was something for me to go to. So I really worked hard. I was so interested in it. I would do it on a couple of times a week, and then obviously got inspired by these three-month-old magazines which would come from abroad, what was happening, and you would get inspired. And of course, I had this older people who were older, means older friends who were already climbing, and they were trying to push boundaries. There was strong ethical debates on, ground up trad climbing is what we were doing then. There was no bouldering, because there was little bouldering. There was bouldering, but remember, we didn't have any pads. So there were no bouldering pads. You had to boulder, you didn't want to fall, or you would have, if it was a high ball, you would top rope, or finally top rope and then lead it, solo it, or try and lead it. So there were strong ethical rules when we formed for ourselves, which was the basis of our climbing. So I seriously started getting into it in 1984 when I was 15 years old. We made a trip down to South India, which was in 1986, where we climbed a my longest route, which was 800 feet high, I would say about 300 meters in South India. First ascent was done by a couple of friends from Delhi. We went down. So other thing was to now venture out to other cliffs, not just being around in Delhi, but to actually go and start. Remember, there were no climbing walls, but I do remember, I think I've not spoken about, but I found this old climbing magazine about how this person had made a climbing wall stuck with araldite rocks on its boundary wall. And I actually made a small traverse for myself, sticking some rocks, flattening them on one side, and then sticking them with araldite, like a super glue along the walls of my house, and and saw pictures of John Backer in, I think it was Life magazine, way back in 85, 86, where he was training in Yosemite and soloing and stuff. So that just inspired us to push harder grades, to actually think that we need to train to get, start training physical training. That would be important. Photos of Tony Aniro and Ron Fawcett, who's a British climber, Jerry Moffat, people like that. And because there were not many role models like that in India. So we were looking at people from magazines abroad and books like Climb, which is a Colorado-based climbing book. And to start starting my journey to do harder and harder trad climbs, I got an opportunity to travel to the UK, which was when I was 18. And there was a British climber who was visiting India, and I took him out boldly, and he was like, "Why don't you come for the youth meet?" And I think he was that time working with the British Mountaineering Council as one of the officers. And he said, I said, "I don't know, man. I don't know how it's going to happen." And he said, "No, there's a youth meet in UK, and we can send you an invite, and you come." I'm like, okay. And it's too far-fetched a plan, for an 18-year-old or 17-year-old to think that that could ever happen. But I remember coming back from an expedition to the mountains in Bhagirathi, where we spent 30 days up in the hills, in the mountains. We almost reached 6,000 meters. It's another story. With my friend of mine, and I came back and I found this invite letter from the British Mountaineering Council. And it was like, they're inviting me to this British meet where the youth from various 35 countries were supposed to congregate, and they were going to host them for 10 days of climbing in Wales. But then the whole thing about, how do I get there? I don't have a ticket. I don't have money to go there. And it's all things colliding in the universe. I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was a journalist. And I was like, man, I don't know how that's going to happen. He was like, oh, we can figure out something. And he was an older guy, he's maybe in his early 30s. He was doing a story about someone, and then he actually talked to this industrialist. He was doing a story about him, and then I think he must have mentioned that this young person is a great climber, or he's a budding climber, not a great climber. And he's been invited, and you think you can sponsor him. I don't know how it happened, Kush, that I got a ticket. He said, yeah, buy his ticket to go to the UK. And actually, I got a plane ticket sponsored to go and attend the youth meet way back in 1988. And I landed up, and I was in UK. I got a ticket and I got a visa, and then I reached there. And that was a complete eye-opener, because we were talking to these really young people who were climbing cutting-edge stuff from the UK, from the US, from Czech Republic, Swiss, French, German. And it was the most crazy thing for 10 days. And then I spent another 3 weeks there, because I got invited to various other places by other British climbers, young people again. They all come to my house. We go climb in the Peak District, or we go climb in the Lake District. And I ended up spending another 4 weeks touring the other places, trad climbing in the UK. It was an eye-opener for me completely, the world of really hard trad climbing. So I wanted to go back, definitely in 1989. I was finishing college, and I was like, I'm desperate to get back. And I did whatever I could. And as a 17, 18-year-old, I went knocking on all doors to get sponsors to fly on this unconventional sport, which people said, is there going to be a competition? Is there going to do this? And I don't know how this happened. Someone told me, man, give them the story of an Olympic dream. That's where people talk to you about sponsorship. And I don't know whether I was trying to con them then or whether it was real, but I kept saying, climbing is going to be an Olympic sport, and I'm trying to train for the Olympics. And that mantra, I don't know what else. So I'm happy that it's not something I was just trying to con people that are giving me money. I kept saying it's going to be an Olympic sport. They're going to be climbing competitions and blah, blah, blah. And that caught people's attention, even though it was not then, but they would say it's going to become. I did manage to even get a ticket from Air India to go back into the UK in 1989. And I got some cash sponsorship from Hindustan Lever, which is a part of the F&B industry. And they were like, okay, I don't know how. Maybe they just thought like an 18-year-old knocking on someone's doors. is brave enough. So I think to even try and get this money, we should give him this money. When I think back, I was like, what was I thinking? Just walking in various offices, spent a month in Bombay. I went back to Bombay because I was told that Bombay is where the head office is and that's where you should go and try and get money. So I didn't know anyone. I would just walk in and start talking about it, give them a proposal and say, look, I've been invited by the BMC. I want to climb there last year and this is going to be a big, big sport. And I want to be part of this big sport. Of course, I had my lines practiced and somewhere it worked. I don't know how. If someone came to me right now, I don't know how. And I got actually a ticket and some money to go climb in 88, 89. And I went to the UK and I climbed again for 3-4 weeks. I'd already had friends from previous year, so I could spend more time climbing in Peak District and various places. And from there, my sister was in the US. So she was like, man, you reached here all the way. She was working then. She just got a job. So she must have saved some money. And she's like, why don't I get you a ticket across to the US? And I actually went across to the East Coast to the Shongangs. And I flew down. I missed college all those 3 months. I was not in college. I was in Delhi. I was supposed to be in college. But I just went to the Shongangs. I lived in 3 weeks near the Uber Falls where there were hardly any people there on the weekdays. And I made some friends there. And then I had this plan of, okay, now the next trip is Colorado and Yosemite. And there was way back and just become a life of a climbing bum. And especially when you didn't have cell phones and Instagram, no one could contact you, right? Unless you had to call them back. So your family and friends and all could not reach to you. So I fixed this. Actually, this happened and I fixed this ride to with someone who was going to Colorado from the Gunks. And we were supposed to share the petrol money and all that. And I went partying the night before, got completely drunk, did not reach back to the campsite. And the person left, of course. And I did not get the ride to Colorado into the big dream in the West I had. So I always say that ride changed my life because if I'd taken the ride, maybe I'll not come back. And then there was, of course, there was no connection. So you could actually disappear without, for a few months or a year before someone influenced you, means your family or whoever else. But that ride did not happen. I reached like late to the campsite. I was completely hungover, just slept the whole day. And of course, the person had left. That ride got missed and I say changed my life maybe. I don't know, for the better or worse or whatever. And then, of course, training back in India, competition, sport climbing. I went to France for a while on the next trip. Sport climbing was just getting introduced in early 90s then. I'm talking about 90, 89, 90. And then, there was competition climbing. Badanikia happened. And the World Cup circuit had just started in 91. Some of the people in the big wigs in the Indian Mountaineering Foundation who were handling the sport then got invited to send a team to Japan. And then the person who was the head of affairs knew that I was very active and had gone abroad and I had much more exposure than anyone else. And they said, look, man, there's no time for qualifications or anything. And there's no walls to climb on. Why don't we get this bunch of 3-4 people to go and at least taste what the sport is? And when they come back with certain knowledge is when we can actually start the sport climbing movement in India. And that's how I got on the team in 1991 into Japan for a World Cup competition, which Yuji Hirayama won his first World Cup competition at the age of 19. It was an amazing epic.
It is certainly so interesting how little things can shape one's life journey. You were there at a campsite in the US and you did not get to come over to the West and check out climbing in Colorado and California because of one night of fun partying, and circle back a few decades later, life pulled you back towards the granite walls of the valley. You took that early inspiration and the exposure, you brought it back to India, and you started training in right earnest. You found other climbers. I'm wondering, what was the rest of your life like? Because the script growing up in India is typically, one is expected to follow a certain path, find a career of sorts, and, join the mainstream. But you bucked the trend somehow, and you put all your passion and energy into becoming the best climber you could be. But at some point, you managed to take climbing and craft some kind of career out of that. Would love for you to talk about how did you fare with bucking the trend? Was your family supportive of you going out and competing? Were you also working on a regular career? on the side? And then ultimately, how did you end up taking climbing into something that became a profession for you?
There was always that pressure from what am I going to do now? I mean, I should be having a career. I should be. So one thing was very clear. The other parts to this kind of a journey as a climber would have been to start taking out people climbing, right? Or start climbing courses or starting working in the trekking industry or mountaineering guiding or something. But this is something I took a very early decision to say. I did start something called the outdoor school, which was basically, I said, I would start taking children out for climbing in Lodge and teach them how to climb, and we run climbing courses. And I did take that journey. I started that in college itself. I did that a few times. And to be honest, I took a very informed decision when I did a few of these that this is not what I want to do, because it became more like a job. And I started hating that. And I was like, this is my life's passion. And if I'm not going to enjoy this, I'm not going to start taking people out. So this was, even though it would mean that I would not be getting my money or this is not my career path. Taking out people, courses out climbing, hoods of like 30, 40 children out climbing was just wearing me out. And I was not enjoying my own climbing. So maybe at an early age of 20 or 21, you think that this is something which I've still not done. I would do it with family and friends and just take them out otherwise, but I would not want to take climbing courses out or even be in the trekking industries where I'm, guiding them. There was pressure to do a job, to work. And I got an offer from a school to teach geography and physical education and teach climbing, even though I was not a trained teacher. And I got this opportunity. And I actually became a teacher for like a year and a half. And we had a blast, actually. I took so many of these people climbing. And some of these kids I taught way back then, even, just that 2 years of teaching, I still climb with them. They became my climbing partners. Now, of course, some of them are professors and they're doing other stuff and running companies and whatever. But then my mind started turning to when I did that competition in Japan about climbing on a climbing wall. I was like, we need to have walls in India, right? Otherwise, how are we going to do competitions? Because we can't train on rock and then go and compete on walls. I mean, that's not how it's going to work. So I decided, well, let's build a wall for ourselves. And my journey to build a wall was in, again, my mother's school. And she was like, why are you thinking of building walls? I started trying to market this concept to people and say, there's a climbing wall. And also I had selfish reasons to train, so I could train on these walls. And what happened is that she said, why are you talking about building elsewhere? Why don't you build in our school? The children will climb, you can climb. And, it'll be kind of big, exposure to the whole country. So I built my first climbing wall and actually in the school, which is run by my mother. We took it from there. I built this wall, which is not very rudimentary now by any standards. And we even held a climbing competition, which was a national sport climbing competition. We invited people from all over the country to come and climb on a wall and actually hold a competition. And you will believe this, the first competition, we even had the great Steve McCure, who's a UK climber, so well known now. He was visiting Delhi. He saw this poster in his small hippie hangout hostel where he was staying about a climbing competition. He actually came and won what is the international category, and he actually mentions that in the book. And he has a photo of the whole climbing wall in his book. So this is very interesting. Then once I built the wall, I started getting some inquiries from the military to build walls. So the army got interested about building walls, and then I started my journey as a climbing wall builder. And even though I was not into engineering or any other construction work, but then this was my passion, right? To get that activity going, get the walls going. So I learned how to build walls and learned what the materials were required and the engineering part, and started my journey to become, so outdoor school actually became wall builders. So we would actually conceptualize the idea, build the walls, train people how to use them. I never operated the walls because that was something which I didn't want to do ever, right? I didn't want to teach people on regular basis as work. So we would build, operate, and transfer. They would then operate the wall. And that's how my journey for climbing wall building started in India. And also simultaneously climbing competition started in India. With that first competition we held in 1993 in December. So the journey of sport climbing started with that.
You took your personal pursuit into climbing and you took that into pioneering the growth of climbing as an industry in India. And I can't think of better stories where passion meets purpose, and you put all your energies into this one basket, and it's paid off for you in so many ways. And also, it's paid off for the community of climbing in India, where we have people who have learned to climb in the walls that you develop, in the facilities that you help create through competitions and whatnot, and in so many interesting ways. One in particular, it's come back full circle, where now, not to be facetious, but you are India's first climbing family. Your wife climbs, your kids climb, and both your kids are talented and strong climbers. Love for you to tell us how you met your wife. I believe there was a climbing connection. Please take us through that piece.
Thanks for your kind words. I met Annie in way back in '89. There were hardly any women climbers then. Actually, our first meeting was also at Dodge, which is a climbing area which I used to frequent a lot. And I think she came through her own university climbing club. One of her friends introduced us there. And then, of course, there was no love at first sight kind of business here. It was more about, she had the same passion for the outdoors because she was born in Bhutan in the wild forest, and she lived a life in Sikkim. Her parents were teachers in Sikkim, headmaster. Her dad was a headmaster in Sikkim. So she enjoyed the outdoors, which I think our connect was more from the outdoors, being outside. And I think we started frequenting, going together a lot more then. That's how this journey started with her. From '89, we started climbing together and making trips out. And also her parents being in education, we were part of the family with more educators. It was a common connect. It was not just about teaching, it's about climbing. And of course, our kids, Abhimanyu and Iqbal, because there was so much talk on family dinners, every day was about climbing or outdoors mainly. So we introduced them. There was no pressure for them. I think we didn't put any pressure for them to climb. I think it was more about enjoying the outdoors. I think that's very important for the kids to actually be comfortable being outside. Means whether it's camping or hiking, and we would do our annual family hiking trip, even when they were 8, 9 years old, climbing small hills or going for a multi-day, 4 or 5 day hike in the Himalayas. I think they caught the bug of climbing later on, just after the teens. They're now just almost as passionate as we were when we were that age. So we're very fortunate that they've taken this path. I hope they enjoy this journey. And if they don't want to drop this, that's fine with us also. We're not so hell-bent that they should be climbers. I think we were never both like that with them. We wouldn't push them on that at all. But we did show them the path to the outdoors. I mean, in the sense that this is where real joys of life are. This is something you should cherish. And I think climbing was a natural progression for them to take up. We are very happy that we are still fit to enjoy being outside with them. We can still go out. Health-wise, we're still able to go out and move with them. We still climb at their level, but at least be around and be able to climb, do a few things around with them. That's very fortunate. I hope we can keep doing that for a while.
You showed your kids the path. You opened the doors for them, and without you actively pushing them into it, somehow at some point, that early exposure and the trips to the mountains rubbed off on them. They now climb in full earnest. And in some ways, this might be this golden period, maybe in your lives as a family, where you and your wife both are still active, passionate adventurers and climbers. And you can do trips together with you, your wife, and your kids, and go climb in different parts of India and overseas. Absolutely fantastic that you have managed to create climbing as a career and as a lifestyle. Moving on a little bit, in terms of community and culture, at some point more you became involved in other sports. As I said earlier, I think of you as the consummate multi-sport adventurer. You took your roots in climbing and you went on to create a small legacy in other sports. You swam across the English Channel. You were one of the first Ironman triathletes coming out of India. And these days, you are doing these epic fast packing and ultra runs all over the Himalayas. How did you take climbing and how did you diversify into these other sports?
Somewhere around the around 2004 or 5, I think somewhere I had felt a loss in my own community, in the sense a lot of my friends had moved on. They had either gone abroad or they'd stopped climbing. They had families or they had children and they were not really actively climbing. And my connect with the younger generations who were coming up then was not very, I was not really connected with them for whatever reason. I don't think I found any of them who were really connected with me in terms of the adventure part of it. Because competition climbing had emerged. I think they were more focused on plastic, climbing walls, not going to the rocks so much, not getting into big adventures. Somehow I got lost in that quest to find suitable partners. Of course, my kids were too young then. Annie was busy with her schoolwork. I just kind of lost that buzz around climbing because, climbing is also about community, about companionship, about friends, the journey. You also need your people around you, but it's not like climbing where you spend a lot of time with mates, right? Or people you're tying to rope with. It's a lot about trust. It's all about building a relationship. It's about having fun at the rocks. Some of that got lost. And I actually lost my way in climbing. So I moved on. I met a few other people, but I was still active. I wanted to be active, and it was not a deliberate attempt. It's, life, you close one door, the other door opens. And I met some friends who were, a friend who was into running and swimming. And I connected with these couple of people in Delhi around who were into triathlon. I never heard of triathlon. One of our friends, he was an expat who came down. Two of them came down to Delhi. They were living, their wives were working in the embassy. They had done the Ironman triathlon. And way back in 2005, hardly any people in India had even heard of it. I think one odd person had probably completed it as a student while being in the university abroad. It was new for me. It was new adventures. So one of the things I really enjoy is being a beginner. I don't mind standing at a start line and say, hey, I don't know this sport, and tell me about it. It's just something which I think is something which is my strength. I don't care if someone says, because it's not like I don't know this. Let me learn how to do this. So I started my journey to swim. I was a very poor swimmer. I'm not that good, but then I started my journey to learn how to swim. And started my journey in the triathlon. And let's see where it takes me. It was thrilling. It was new, not like climbing, because climbing has its own adventures. But then I had this newfound friends who were real fun. They were very encouraging. We had a blast together where we would go cycling. We go up in mountain biking in the Himalayas. I did some long mountain biking trips with them from Manali to Leh, over the highest passes in the world. We did some mountain biking races together. This Ironman triathlon quest came up, and it seemed a little insane in the beginning. But then, when you have a community around you, when you have friends who are on the same passion, on the same high energy shift, then things move. And I managed to do my first Ironman first 70.3 in 2009, and then Ironman 211. Basically, I was not missing climbing, to be honest, because I was having so much fun within this community. I started ultra trail running. Running was a new thing for me again. I'd done some running before, half marathon, but long endurance sports is something which I enjoy being. Because I figured that I like being outside. I wanted to spend the day out. So if it was longer the day, the better for me. If you would spend 12 hours running around in the bush, I would happy to do that, or moving around the mountains. So all that kind of started manifesting into one into the other. Because I had spent enough time climbing in my early days, I still had a base of climbing, right? Of course, I was not as good as earlier, but it doesn't matter because it comes back to you pretty soon. So I started dabbling back into climbing later on. I mean, recently, a few years ago. So I was very happy to learn other things. And nuances about open water swimming, about ultra trail running, about triathlons. Did a few mountaineering expeditions, which I'd done earlier. So all that it was a great thrill to keep moving back and forth. I really enjoyed this combination that I could do what I wanted. If I was not feeling so great about one sport, I would just move to the other. And obviously I'm not To be honest, Kush, I'm average or below average at these sports. I'm not highly competitive at some great level or anything. But then at least I enjoy whatever base level I can practice it at, and it's been super for that. I'm grateful that I could actually move to other things and do a combination of things whenever, however opportunity I would get. And I have a much wider community now where I can, when I shall feel like trail running, I have a trail running friends to go with. If I have to swim, I have a swimming friends to go with. That's been great. It's been fun to do that.
I love what you said about finding joy in being a beginner. I found that true in my life as well, where sometimes climbing has become less important and I've picked up other things. And it's often because I also find joy in growth and progress. And sometimes that excitement in one thing fades and something else comes up. And I'm able to find reward in learning and finding something new about myself through that sport. You didn't just discover these new things and dabble in them, you took them to some new frontiers. For example, so many different things you've done, but for example, you went and swam across the English Channel, which I think is something so cool and different. How was the experience of projecting that venture? Were there other people out there with similar aspirations as you? And also, do you think your training and lessons in becoming one of India's best climbers at that time help you prepare for swimming across the channel?
Kush, my journey for swimming actually started with triathlons. Like I said, I wanted to do the Ironman triathlons. India is not completely swimming friendly country that way. There are not many people swimming as much, maybe in the US or abroad, where you have coaches and systems and squads and swim squads. And, in Delhi, the pools close in 6 months a year, they shut because we don't have heated pools. There's a big challenge to do stuff in India, as you would know, to pursue these things. So one has to be either an extra passionate drive, find ways to do, like for open water swimming, we found a lake close to Delhi. Fortunately, I mean, this is just God sent, is a huge open water lake. So I used to say my pool is never closed. I can swim throughout the year because otherwise you can only swim 6 months a year in Delhi if you go to a pool. So that started my journey for open water swimming because I really liked not being in the box, literally, pun intended, in a swimming pool, but being out in the wild water. And my inspiration for a lot of these journeys and adventures come from earlier used to come from books. Now it comes from podcasts and other things. I will read a lot of books. I read this book about swimming to Antarctica of Lynn Cox, who's a legend in open water swimming in California based. And I read about her journeys and how she would swim to cross the Catalina Channel and train as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old. So inspired me. I was like, yeah, I want to do this. This is so cool. And I don't think to be honest, I was not the right candidate to be crossing in the English Channel. But then I did it so I wanted to do it as a solo, which is how it's, the real way of doing it. But then I was like, a friend of mine suggested, why don't you do it as a relay swim initially and then do a solo? And like things conspire, right, in the universe to make things happen. I found this international relay team, which has been led by this legendary Troy McAdder. She's the queen of the channel, done 41 crossings of the English Channel. She's from Australia. And she was leading a national team, which I joined. And I trained for a year. And to be honest, as the day approached closer, there were a lot of challenges. One is the cold water challenge of the English Channel, which we don't find in India because in Delhi, the water is cold only in the winters for like 2 months. Cold means 15 degrees and less, which is 60 Fahrenheit. But then as the summer progresses and the channel only warms up in June and July. And again, like I said, one thing is swimming and the other thing is you have a whole subsport called the channel swimming because there's so many nuances around channel swimming. You have the neap tide or you're a spring tide. What is the best time to go? Who's your channel pilot? How are you going to swim? What time you have to go? What is the cold water training? So Fortunately, I found my body physiology adapted very well with cold water, which I discovered, or maybe it's just my head. I don't know. I think through the winter I could swim without a swimsuit because you don't have a, the channel rule says that you don't swim without a, you have to do it like a normal, like a spring day kind of with a small swimsuit and with a single cap with, with no other protective gear. So that was a whole learning experience again about channel swimming, which is called the Everest of open water swimming. This time I was very nervous because I felt my preparation was not up to there because I was never really a swimmer, right? This is some sport I'd taken up now and I decided to go to the pinnacle of that sport, the so-called pinnacle. So I was quite nervous. And for the first time, I had a few sleepless nights. Normally, I don't get that anxiety. But because I felt this is completely out of my comfort zone. But you absolutely bang on. My lessons from climbing, I find that because you can climb, you can do trad climbing and do some multi-pitch or single pitch trad climbing. There's no sport which compares to that. If you can manage your head doing first ascent, ground up trad climbing, you can manage a lot of these other sports, just mentally. So for me, that the lessons coming out of climbing has been very valuable because that has helped me to prepare for, in triathlon, if I do in the Ironman triathlon, it's not life threatening in any way, right? But you can stop, you can just bail out if you want to, and you're not going to die. When you try climbing ground up 60 feet, your gear rips, or you took a bad decision, you could actually hit the ground. So keeping that, my early days of climbing has probably helped me find that some of these other sports are manageable. I'm not saying easy, but I'm saying they're manageable. So I always compare it climbing trad on could be bad rock or could be unprotected gear. And the decisions you make there are very are basically life lessons, right? And that's how I think I can manage to do some of the other sports. Even ultra running, maximum what happens? You get tired, you just stop, right? I mean, there's nothing crazy going on unless you're on some bridge which you get stormed on but then again, those decisions you take there. So certainly climbing has helped to push boundaries in some of these sports.
I read Lynn Cox's book on swimming across Antarctica as well, maybe over 15 years ago or so, but I did not aspire to do anything like that. Where do you find the drive and the dedication to realize these audacious goals? Is it something about your personality? Maybe if I was to go back and ask your parents about more being a young kid, was there something about you that set you apart a little bit where you could go from, let's say, not even knowing how to swim in a country quite far away from the English Channel to actually learning, preparing, and completing that kind of goal? What is it, do you think, about you that helps you realize these things?
I just get very excited when I get some of these goals. They just kind of have this, I just get very into, I don't know what happens. I firstly am a very goal oriented person. In my mind, I create this goal. I don't know, maybe I keep thinking of over and over again, or maybe over the years I think over it. It's not like it happens over a period, like over a few weeks or months. Maybe it does. And once I think about it, it keeps rotating in my head. I just get this excitement within myself that why this experience will be so exciting. And the journey or the experience or the learning which I will have will be very rewarding. Maybe it's that because I always have some goal in mind, whatever happens. Even now, I have got like multiple goals for a whole year already. One is not even started, and I'm talking about the third or the fourth goal, what I'm going to do after this. And I take them pretty seriously. When I plan these, I'm very keen and I find a sense of, I don't know, once I do this goal, I sometimes don't even feel like talking about it. I rarely talk about it to people or write about it too much or even, because I think it's not like it's a tick mark. It's basically, I've experienced it. It's over. How do I now? There's always the next going on in my head. I don't know what drives it. I think it's just excitement. new experiences, new learnings, something like that. Because as a child, I would get excited about things. I was not an overachiever or anything, a very ordinary kid in terms of academics and everything else. But in terms of outdoors, I get super excited because I think I just like being outdoors. And then just the excitement of working towards this goal is another, towards the journey towards these goals is more important, of course, because you learn so much, you do so much, you plan. And I get this, and frighteningly, I get sometimes, like my wife would say, I'll get this crazy tunnel vision that I would not even, sometimes I feel it's crazy that I just keep over and over and over and over about this, only this massive, it's not even, just this thing which is probably going to happen 6 months from now. So, which can be quite irritating, I'm sure, for other people around. But yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I think it's just the fun of doing stuff, maybe.
It's so badass. You were preparing and accomplishing these outstanding projects. I am guessing that you did not have many contemporaries like you who were pursuing these different kinds of large projects in the outdoors. Do you think you were finding other people to train with for doing things like these Ironman trips or swimming across the English Channel back in the day? And then I will tack on a second question, which is perhaps there were people out there who may have started on some of these projects with you, but didn't see them through to the end of the day. What are a couple of things that you did or do differently that have allowed you to succeed and continue at a high level where perhaps your contemporaries have not done? Because, like I said, there are not many people like you who are pursuing these large, audacious goals with your level of performance and intensity.
Kush, once I conceive some kind of goal in my head, some kind of a project, I get obsessive about it. I think that is something which happens to me. I think about it all the time. I plan, I'm plotting, that's part of my personality probably. It's just that I'm working towards it, whether people are with me, not with me. I also find that people join up. The universe collides, right? If you want something really bad, colludes to get things together. I believe that happens. You meet people who help you on that journey. I think if you believe in something really a lot, then you will end up with people who are going to be helping you towards going there. And a lot of positive people come across. And I find if you surround yourself with positive, you connect with positive energy. And I think that helps. That really helps, connecting with positive people. People don't start your journey by saying, oh, you can't do this, or this is bullshit. You don't even know how to swim. You don't even know how to do this. How are you going to do that? I think I automatically connect with very positive people, or they come across in my goals, or I see them as positive energy. I think that energy helps to sort of propel yourself. If I called you, I'm going to go and climb El Cap. I'm like, oh, I'm going to drive you there. Or what else can I do to help you out? I'm just giving an example. This is positive energy, right? People are saying, oh, how you can't climb this. What are you going to do? What's the point of coming? It's a waste of money. Just give an example here. So like even the English Channel, I wanted to swim that, or the triathlons. I had my friends who were like, no, man, you can do it, even though there's poor training ground in Delhi where we can't bicycle more than a couple of hours without getting passed around in the traffic, or we don't have a pool to swim in. We found a lake, right? We found ways to do things. So I think meeting positive people also propels you in the journey. And even if I wanted to do my walk across the Himalayas, I always had these friends who came together, or I had met people who got driven in the wake of this excitement. And they actually started helping out. So this is not something you do alone. This is something you drive your energy, and then you hit positive vibes, and then take them forward to conclude whatever you're doing. At least give it a good shot. Because I don't put crazy pressure on myself to do something. I'm not sort of, this is do or die. This is it. No, it's we give it a good shot. We give it a good attempt. So I think planning well and then meeting positive people around, a positive community around, whatever, I think is a very big factor push to make things happen. I think that's something I think happens in each and every case. Whatever project I pick up, I am always along a path where I meet positive people, and they kind of help put this energy. It multiplies the energy into getting these projects done. So I think that could be a big factor playing in actually making some things happen.
One puts positive energy out in the world, and through these karmic forces, those energies come back if one's intentions are authentic and they come from the heart. That question I had about some things you're doing which might be different, which have allowed you to succeed. Is it also, Mohit, the way you have organized your life and your career? Because yes, you have a career and you support your family. How has designing your life appropriately allowed you and continues to allow you to pursue these honestly very resource and time intensive goals?
One very big factor is Annie, my wife, is a very big support on this. She understands when I'm not trying to hide any goals with her. I tell her this is what's going to happen. This is what I want to do. I mean, she's a positive energy there. She's saying, yeah. I mean, she's not even saying yes or no. She's like, she already knows it's going to happen. She'll make it happen. So that becomes, like I said, a positive force to make it happen. And then there is no resistance. I don't have to fight that part at all. And there is an adjustment to, okay, I'm going to be out for 40 days and how are we going to work around that? There's already a plan being set around that. When is a good time to go away? Is to not harm other interests, looking after the family or any other thing could happen. So that I think helps. So a good life partner helping you on the quest to achieve what you want to do is very important, Push, because without that, I think half the battle is lost or half the battle is won. That's super support. And I appreciate that a lot. Once that happens, then you can always work the work part around, and depends what your priorities are and see what is the best time to. It's not a rash thing that you just take off and let everything drop on the way. And then, of course, that'll become a mess then. So you obviously have to time your goals or time it well so it has a minimum impact on other things which is happening in your life. So when you fix those goals, you should see what is the right time. Is it 6 months from now, 2 months from now, 11 months from now, or whenever, so that you are in preparation. Plus, you are able to minimize the impact of your disappearing for this time on other factors which are going to happen. So I think that through discussion, through thinking, and having a little very clear understanding, anticipating of what the next month or 6 months or 1 year is going to be like. Of course, I mean, everything is not perfect, but then you need to, of course, have a trade-off and see what is the minimum impact it's going to cause for your disappearing. So that's how I try and work that out.
Setting up the right structures, indeed, is that sometimes unseen and invisible layer that helps us continue to progress towards our goals. And I think that is obviously true with you with your outdoor goals, but I think it is certainly true in life as well. Changing tracks a little bit, wanted to get a deeper look into how you train and prepare for some of these goals. It might help us if we take an upcoming goal of yours. So I know that you have spoken of doing this or attempting this fastest known time FKT Ultra along Missouri, where you are planning on tagging these 7 summits in the Himalayas, covering a long distance. So if you can quickly tell us what that goal is, and then how are you preparing yourself for it?
This was conceived last year, but my friends, 2 other friends who live in the local area where I'm going to run and walk with them, we've been talking about it and we timed it for this year. Basically, when it's going to be ultra trail running, then I shift my focus on that goal like a few months. Generally, I have goals which are generally I prepare, depending how big the goal is, between 4 to 6 months. I don't keep it for very long, not a year generally. For 6 months, I would then shift my sport. If I'm in climbing, if I have a running goal, I would change it 6 months or 4 months before, just running more, working towards that, and drop the other sports, not completely, but put them on the back burner. So I'll maybe climb once a week, or go climb once, twice a week, and run 4 times a week, and weightlift 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 3 times a week to prepare for that goal. So I would put those other sports on back burner, work on the sport which I'm planning my goal for. If it's going to be a swim, then I would change it to swimming, depending on how long the swim is going to be. Maybe do 6 weeks or 4 weeks, because I already have a base for most of these sports. So for me to shift, I don't have to keep doing it all through the year. I can actually drop a sport, keep it off back burner for 6 months. Running is something I'm maintaining now just for health and fitness as a base sport. Drop my mileage when I'm doing other stuff to a few 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers a week. So that just to maintain base fitness. But if I'm going to practice for the ultra run now, I've already started working almost 2 months or 3 months, 12 weeks. I think I find is sufficient for me to pull through this kind of an effort. So that's what I would do. So it's like a periodic cycling, right? I would periodize it, right? Prioritizing the sport my goal is going to be for, and work on it, say 6 months or 4 months, depending on how big the goal is. After this, I'm going off to cycling in Sri Lanka but that's more of a leisure thing, for about 500 kilometers across the country. But that's not, again, I haven't cycled much for very long, but it's not going to be we're not going to cycle aggressive distances. So I know my base fitness for cycling, because I've done it over the years so much, quite a lot. I'm confident that it will not be a problem. Maybe the first day in the saddle is going to be a bit sore, but after that, I'll be fine. So now I've developed that little confidence. I hope it's not overconfidence, but it's confidence enough to say if I put in certain time in the certain sport, I will be able to get to this level to achieve and conclude that goal. So the 7 summits tagging is an FKT, which will be very interesting. You have to do a lot of route finding, it's a lot of new terrain. Could be some urban areas we go through, some roads, but it's super exciting. There's a big question mark, or how are we going to link up? And the exciting part is it's so close to Delhi. I'm going to be doing it over the weekend. It's not that I have to take time off. I'm going to the Easter weekend and we run it over Easter weekend. And I like these small, short goals, which short periods of time I can disappear, but get a bang for the buck by doing these smaller days out, but long, but smaller days out of home.
Absolutely. The foundation of preparation and of multiple seasons engaged in, let's say, climbing or running or maybe bicycling coming up for you, those add up. And maybe that's one benefit of getting older is one doesn't have to build that base fitness over and over. It stays with us. Getting to the brass tacks a little bit, love to hear how you specifically prepare for this project in terms of how much mileage you're putting in a week. What does, let's say, a typical day in your life look like? What are you eating to make sure you're fueled for both the training as well as the time when you're actually going to be running? One of my memories from my trip in Delhi last year and spending time with you was we went to the climbing gym in Delhi, and we put in a morning climbing session. It was a fun, robust session. We put in a few hours bouldering, and then you dropped me back. But then right after that, you were heading off to this lake outside Delhi to go swimming. So I was quite impressed because I was already sore from that morning's climbing, and I was happy to go home and maybe eat something, maybe stretch, maybe take a nap. But then you were just moving on to the next thing, and it was only early afternoon. So I'm guessing you are able to combine multiple activities, not just in 1 week, but within a day. So yeah, please give us a sense of your day-to-day preparation and your diet and some of your maintenance to be fit and ready.
Kusha, I do put in some long days sometimes. On Sunday, which is 2 days ago, I would spend the whole day out. I ran in the morning with my wife Annie, 5 miles. Then I drove to the lake where we ran another 4 miles, swam for about 2 kilometers, then ran back 4 miles. And then I thought I would put in some climbing, which I did not do. The whole day spent out basically, because that's something you're replicating what I would do when I would be on this FKT attempt. I'd be out for 10, 12 hours, right? During the day, I would carry some bars or maybe prepare the breakfast or carry some kind of nutrition during the day. So it's kind of not the same intensity, even though I'm doing different sports. But what I would do is mimic a whole day out where I'm just having fun. We swam, we ran twice a day almost, and twice in that day, double workouts through trail running. And then, so this is something I enjoy doing actually, mixing up the sports. Some days I would run 10 miles and then go climb in the afternoon and then follow it with a swim. This is not every day, but on a weekend, like on a Sunday, I would just enjoy doing that kind of stuff. On a normal weekday, I would put in my running mileage, maybe 40 miles a week. And then, but I did make the very conscious effort this time, last 6 weeks, to actually lift weights. Because I think weight training at this age, and I know earlier podcasts which you've talked, some serious proper athletes have talked about. I think that is something which is important as we're aging, is to actually build muscle, strengthen the muscle. So strength training is something I'm going to prioritize along with anything else I do. Everyone talks about it, and I believe in it too, because I see the difference when I don't and when I do. Some of the trail runs, this time I experimented actually on myself, which is experimental, just to experiment. I did a 60 kilometers trail run in January. And before that, I'd spent 8 weeks with, 40, 50 mile weeks, straight for 8 weeks. But I didn't lift any weights just to experiment how that would work. And I felt I did not feel as strong after that run as I did when earlier runs, when I'd actually put in less miles of running, but also included my weight training sessions. So I just wanted to see how that works. And I see that my finish at the end of the 60-kilometer run was not as strong, or I did not feel as good as I did when I put in the weight training. So that's another case, or another person telling you that strength training is important. Prioritize as we age. I think that's very important. I don't think it's only about age. I think even for younger athletes, I think dropping the mileage, putting the strength actually I felt much stronger. This is what I prioritized for my run even this week. So for this weekend, I was like, I must put in the weight training, and the mileage can actually be a little less. It's still going to pull me through.
Mo, that is certainly insightful, and sounds like you have used both external learnings and also your own experiences to inform your training. You are able to calibrate what you do, how you do it, in order to be prepared. I am wondering if you've ever had any big setbacks or injuries that were difficult to come back from. That is one question. The second question I thought I would add on is, between that spectrum of talent and hard work, where do you think you lie? Are you able to continue performing at this high level because you believe you're gifted? Or do you think it's by the sheer dint of hard work?
Kush, to answer your first part of the question, is that basically, yes, that's true that one is working a little more or differently now as I was doing it maybe 10, 15 years ago. I feel I'm getting actually stronger than I was, or fitter than I was maybe 15 years ago. If I train something well, because I think I'm training more wisely now. I'm recovering better. As a young person, even you see my sons, they would just climb like mad and not recover at all. Now I think I'm more patient with my recovery part. If I need recovery days, I take that extra recovery days, because that's why when you get stronger, right? So I am feeling much better than what I was doing a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Because of training a little more wisely, I'm using my head a little more, much more, I would think, which also includes that I'm included a few things like I'm working with a physio who I regularly visit once in 4 to 5 weeks. Even if I don't have an issue, I would go back because this is something I did not do. I had a debilitating elbow tendonitis, what is called golfer's elbow, when I was climbing about 20 years ago. And that completely stopped me from even climbing because it was so painful that in that time there was very low information, as you would know, about elbow and climbing injuries, climbing related injuries. Now you have a host of information and podcasts and doctors and research. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was just some articles written here and there, and one had to manage. I even ended up taking cortisone injections, which was wrong. It brought back the injury right away. I didn't, so that stopped me for a bit, which was elbow tendonitis. But now I've had some issues like Achilles tendonitis 2 years ago when I was running. But I've been working with a very good physio. I go to him once in 4 to 5 weeks, and we work through the injuries. I'm managing to solve that problem before it becomes too much. Right now, I'm battling a bit of a irritated rotator cuff because I was climbing and swimming a lot. Last winter, a couple of months ago, I was close to the sea, so I was putting in a few miles of swimming a day, and that is not swimming and climbing don't go very well together in terms of shoulder stability. This is what I think, at least long distance swimming. That is irritating me. Now working with that on it. So moment I'm constantly working on putting the niggles away, not stopping me from completely doing something. If I have a problem with my shoulder or something, I would just switch to cycling or I would switch to running more. Let the physio happen with my shoulder so that doesn't get taxed. Rather than beating up my shoulder by climbing again and again or go stand up paddle boarding or kayaking or something which is going to hurt the shoulder more. So that switch I'm willing to make. I'm willing to compromise and say, okay, my shoulder's hurting, don't climb so much, do the physio, do something else. And I'm happy with that because I'm happy doing any activity. So it doesn't really, the switch is not such a compromise. I don't find it a compromise. Of course, you find that, oh, I was supposed to do this project this winter and it's not happened, blah, 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 whatever. It's sad. I mean, I should be climbing that. But I don't mind that anymore. The fact I'm grateful that I can actually make the switch and happy that I can at least do that keeps me grounded. I think this is minor problems. So making the switch, acceptance that yes, this activity will have to be my project, red point project for this winter is not going to happen this winter because of my shoulder, or maybe make it worse if I'm trying to do it, is not such an upsetting thing anymore. Earlier, I would probably brood over it and be not care about it and keep throwing myself at it. But now I don't. I make the switch pretty fast and enjoy the process actually of doing other stuff. So I think that is helping out in terms of that is keeping the regularity of your physio going, keeping a check on the body is probably what's, because I'm aiming here is what is longevity, right? What is my goal right now is longevity, is how I can keep an active lifestyle for as much as I can do. Uh, so that's the game. That's the end game actually, really.
I would have to agree. Yes, the end game absolutely is staying healthy. Yeah, it's not just living longer, but also living healthfully, where we are able to continue doing things that we love. And I can see that you're accomplishing that in two significant ways. One is being aware of what's going on with your body and your mind and seeing specialists as you need to look after things before they become, nightmares. And the second is you have consciously over the years added diversity to your disciplines, where if, let's say, somebody just rock climbs and gets a hurt finger or an elbow or a shoulder issue, one is relegated to the bench and has to stop what they're doing. You, on the other hand, have other activities that you can jump into, activities that you are equally inspired by and you have goals with. And I think maybe having that diversity not only allows you to switch between different sports to allow your body to heal, but maybe also refreshes your mindset in a way where you take some time off running or maybe climbing, and when you get back to it, I think the excitement certainly helps. I know it helps me when I am on a long break from climbing these days, but I think the break actually helps me refresh my body, of course, but also my mind as well, where I think I'm starting to get excited by even simple trips to climb easier grades, but just get back on the outside and enjoy moving on the rock again. And some of those basic things, those gifts of climbing that I forget, because sometimes, like all of us, I start obsessing about performance and grades. And taking a break helps me get back to those grassroots. Moving on, Mo, what is maybe one thing you are not good at and wish you were?
I think I'm not very good at prioritizing things I want to do, and I need to prioritize certain things, which is what I want to get better at. Is to prioritize not just work, but just my whatever my goals are. Sometimes I don't prioritize it well, and that's something I should want to do. And of course, there's some another thing which, in terms of sport, purely in sport, if you're asking, I want to be a better swimmer. I think my technique is so horrible, and I've been working on years and years trying to better my technique on swimming. I just feel I should get better at that. That's something I think will help me to achieve my some long standing goals, and that's something I want to do.
We procrastinate things that we don't enjoy doing. I certainly have a list of things that I need to get around to, but I can't easily seem to. And then, yeah, I think it goes on to your humility that you have these swimming related records to your credit, but the journey to get better, that journey is limitless. More in the last 5 or so years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Kush, one of the things I last 5 years especially has been is to prioritize a healthy and active life. I think more than my career path or trying to earn more money or trying to get more material gains or anything if I would want to get is now actually to spend time with friends, value those relationships with family, value those bonds we've done, maintain those bonds much more than what I would want to, which I would do earlier. And of course, keep a quest for an active life while prioritizing those relationships also. So it's not that we're dropping, just trying to tick off these goals, if you might want to call it a tick, at the cost of relationships. So relationships matter as much or much more than achieving any of these goals I'd set out to do.
Mo, you are in your 50s now, and I want to know exactly how old are you, but do you think you are aging well?
So born in 1968. Kush, when anyone asks me how old I am, I'm saying born in 68. So they need to do the calculation and the maths, whatever that is. I think so.
And are you aging well? Are you prepared for the next couple of decades?
To be honest, I don't even know I'm going to survive next couple of decades. I don't plan that long. I plan for the next goal and not for the years. I feel I have an active life. I'm able to do whatever I want to do, at least whatever my desire in doing outdoor sports in terms of activities is good. It's progressing well. In terms of decades, I don't know. I live pretty much by my next goal. I don't look so much in the future. So my goals in the next whatever my outdoor goals in the next 4 months or 6 months is what I'm happy to just go by that and not worry about the years after or forget decades. I mean that's too long for me to plan. So take it step by step and just keep moving. Yeah, that's the mantra for now.
Any regrets or I should say, biggest sacrifices to achieve this life?
Not really, not really. In terms of regrets, no regrets. I mean, one did whatever was best in those circumstances, I think. So, in terms of, I could have done that, or I could have done this, or XYZ is meaningless because I'm sure at that time, whatever decision was taken, it was taken keeping in mind what are the circumstances. I have zero regrets in that terms, and I don't know what one means by sacrifice to be honest. I mean, everything is a cost to the other, right? But then you feel that if it's a balanced way you've dealt with, then it's fine. Of course, I feel that sometimes I could have done my part of my business better, or I could have grown it to a large extent. But then this is a decision I had taken, right, to prioritize my outdoor projects more than and family more than my business pursuits. So that's again, it's I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. I would say we took the best decision possible at that point of time, and that's all that matters really, rather than looking back and saying you could have done this or that because that cannot change anyway.
When we recently hung out at Suru Fest in Ladakh, and I know that when you generally go climbing or doing these sports, you're surrounded by a lot of youngsters who are also doing these sports. And when some of these young athletes come to you and they ask you on some things they should be doing so they can achieve some of the successes that you have, what is one piece of advice that you pass on to them?
A piece of advice I always say is maybe that's something which they maybe need to reflect. They probably reflect on later, or they don't understand at that point. I'm not sure. Is whatever you're doing is do it with the right intention. Your intention is to enjoy climbing, is to push your limits while you're being in the outdoors and enjoying these great outdoors, and keep that as your larger goal than just pushing grades or just trying to climb this problem or that project. So if one has that larger picture in mind, you can end up not only doing your projects but actually doing a lot more with yourself. When I say this to someone, this might not seem like a very concrete or some magic pill I'm trying to give them, which is probably what they expect. But it's something I'm sure some people reflect on later, and like one, I hope they reflect on it and see what I meant by that. So this is my advice to them: is have the best time, do whatever is possible, and while keeping your intentions very clear, why are you doing that? So this is what I tell them.
Super, super. When you look back at some of these things you've done, obviously you inspire a lot of people, myself included, Mo, in so many ways. What or who inspires you to keep pushing yourself?
I get inspired a whole lot of people. I get actually inspired by all kinds of my contemporaries. I got inspired by people in the past, people I wouldn't have known. I have books I've read, podcasts are here. So my inspirations come from all kinds of people who are doing badass stuff. I mean, it's not some one person or one figure. If I read a Ernest Shackleton book, which I read probably 13, 25 years ago, it probably inspires me. If I read a Lynn Cox book to swim the Antarctica, that inspired me. So I keep picking up inspirations by what other people do. It could be random people, it could be random books, not random people, but people who achieve big things. So my inspiration, I constantly keep getting inspired by even young athletes now who are doing boulders or anything else. So my inspirations are all these people. It's not just one particular person or one particular climber or swimmer or runner or like Courtney Walter is doing a lot of stuff in ultra running now. I get inspired by her, but I also get inspired by the Taramora runners who were, you know, who were running years ago. And I think connecting with these positive energies is what where I get my inspiration from.
Thank you, Mo. When are we seeing you next in California for your next attempt on climbing the nose in Yosemite?
Yeah, Kush, I hope to be there next May of 2025. It's probably going to be the year which I want to get Annie over also. So that's why I'm waiting for her visa to be done. She can also come, and maybe we can drink a celebratory beer on the El Cap Meadows, yeah, after it's all done. or not done. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. At least we tried.
I cannot wait to see you back here again, and absolutely being able to enjoy our bodies and our lives and get to climb and recreate in these wild and beautiful places. I think that is the ultimate gift.
Absolutely true.
Well, thank you for the time today, Mo. I know it's late your time, so I'll let you get to your time resting.
Great. Thank you, Kush. And I've heard some of your earlier podcasts, and I think you're doing a brilliant job. A lot of your, like I said, who inspires me, some of your people who are on your podcast inspire me. Great stuff. I think keep up the good work. I think you're doing an amazing job. Okay. Cheers. Good night.
Much appreciated. There you have it, folks. Mo's incredible journey of exploration and pushing boundaries. From his early days as a young climber in India, to running Ironman triathlons, to swimming across the English Channel, and to his current exploits with fast packing and ultra running across the Himalayas. Mo's story is a powerful example of what's possible when we embrace challenges and dedicate ourselves to learning continuously. One thing that really resonated with me was Mohit's account of training for the English Channel swim in the lakes near Delhi. He did not let the lack of ideal conditions or facilities hold him back. He adapted, improvised, and made it happen. That's the kind of resourcefulness and determination we can all learn from. What resonated with you? I would love to hear that. Please DM me or comment. Let's not also forget Mo's openness about his struggles and setbacks. His willingness to share those experiences reminds us that it is okay to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, but to keep learning and growing throughout life. So as we wrap up this episode, I hope you are feeling inspired to embrace your own challenges, try new things, and push your boundaries. Remember, it's not too late to start something, to rediscover a forgotten passion. Thank you for joining us again on Ageless Athlete. Please be sure to subscribe and share this episode with anyone who might need a little inspiration. If you haven't already, please also check out our new YouTube channel where you can see all of these great podcast interviews live. Until next time, keep exploring, keep pushing your limits, and stay ageless.